everyone, welcome to Backstory Sessions. I'm your host Matt. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hey everybody, it's Kat, and I want to welcome you to this episode of Backstory Sessions. I'm joined today by my co-host, Matt. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Kat. Hey, everyone. How are you?
This is really interesting, Matt, because we have this week's episode and next week's episode are both actresses from this same TV series.
Yes, I remember that.
And I think that's kind of cool that we're having, like, back-to-back actresses from this same hit show.
Yeah, that's true.
And we can kind of, after we've interviewed them both, kind of like compare the characters. And because I'm wondering, like, are they very different characters, or are they similar? Are they good or bad, or, just all those things. So we'll have a better idea of that after we've spoken to both of them. But this show is Three Pines. It was the #1 rated show. It premieres in Canada. So it's filmed in Canada, in Quebec.
Brr.
And, we have American TV is influenced a lot by Canadian actors, musicians. There's just a lot of talent there.
That's true, yeah. Trying to think of who I remember is from there.
Celine Dion, of course.
Yeah.
That pops to my mind immediately, because really an icon. Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. Bryan Adams and
Yeah.
Shania Twain, I believe, is from there.
Yes, she is. And the Trailer Park Boys.
Oh my God.
I love that show. Bubbles, if you're listening, I'd like to interview you.
Jeez.
Oh my gosh, yes, I would love to have the Trailer Park Boys on here.
Alrighty.
Maybe not all at once, because it'd be so much fun though. But there are other, like, Schitt's Creek is also an excellent Canadian-based television show, and that brings us to the dad on there, Eugene Levy, Canadian.
No, I didn't know that. Or maybe I did. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's a great, it was a great series. I was sad to see it end.
Yeah.
But just, there's just a wealth of talent. But our guest today, Anna, she is actually not originally from Canada, but, we're going to find out how she ended up in Canada and a part of this TV show.
So this Three Pines, it's a mystery kind of show or crime drama, or?
Yeah, kind of like figuring out who done it, that kind of like a Columbo kind of thing, I guess.
Ah, I see. So did you watch Columbo?
I did. I always say Dumbo Columbo because that kind of tells you, like, my thoughts on a lot of the crime shows like that, because it's like, okay, they figure them out in, like, such a clever way that you, one, either have already picked up on who, like, I'm pretty intuitive and I'm like, okay, I already know who it's going to be or whatever.
Right.
Or they're like, so, it's like so bizarre in the way that they find the answer that it's not believable. And I just felt like Columbo was kind of like that. So, I did watch it though. So,
what does that say?
I'm a Columbo fan, but,
Yeah.
I would not say that's my favorite type TV show to watch.
What's your favorite crime drama, though? I mean, like, that in that vein.
Well, I mean, could I count The Sopranos? Because, like somebody was always trying to figure out like who was.
No, I don't think The Sopranos would.
It's this, um. So The Mentalist is pretty interesting. At least the guy's pretty hot, so I'm gonna go, with that. Like he has a look. So, um, but what I do like about it, because again, I mean, he's like Dumbo Columbo in that, it's like again silly ways that they figure out,
Right. Yeah.
who done it, but he does have like like a story that goes throughout. Like he's in search. He's got his own demons
Right.
that
Yeah.
he's trying to deal with. So I don't know. Have you watched The Mentalist?
I may have seen like bits and pieces of it. I don't remember ever sitting down and watching a whole episode. But
Yeah. Did you just stare at him like his eyes and all that are dreamy? But
yeah, no, I did not.
yeah, well, like I mean, the girls. There's a redhead on there and whatever too.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, just saying that it's, I also am a big fan of The Blacklist.
yeah, yeah.
A
See,
really big fan.
I was gonna say maybe like you were a fan of Charlie's Angels or McLeod or the Rockford Files or something like that.
Yeah, well, after me saying Dumbo Columbo, you're probably going to rule out most of those, I don't know.
Or what was the one where the guy was like researching a book and he used to help solve crimes and stuff?
Oh, yeah, what was that?
Uh, Castle, was it?
Maybe Castle.
Yeah, I think it was.
Uh, you have House, too, if you want to, like, throw the medical, like he's always trying to solve like what's wrong with that person, and they've got like something that maybe 1 in 10 million people would ever encounter. But
Yeah, he saw a lot of really interesting cases apparently.
yeah, so so there's just all kinds of things like that. And, I mean, do you like that kind of thing, or do you find them like a bit of a stretch from reality?
Once in a while I'll get into it. I don't watch a lot of TV, so but once in a while I'll sit down and watch something, and if it piques my interest while I'm channel surfing, then I'll watch it. But generally, I don't watch a lot of TV, so.
Did you watch like the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew,
I
Murder She Wrote? That's another one.
I didn't really watch it. I read some of the books though, because my brother was big into that, and so the books were laying around the house, and I read some of the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys stuff.
Cool.
But it was
Well,
always like
Three Pines.
it was always the creepy lighthouse keeper that did it. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I
like in
mean,
Scooby Doo, that was probably my favorite crime story. Was Scooby Doo.
Ruby-dooby-doo. Well, Three Pines is also based off of of a book. So I find that interesting too, and that's one thing I'd like to, hear from the actresses. Like, did they read the book first? Like, were they familiar with the book before
Right.
that they auditioned to be a part of the series?
Yeah, that'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. So, let's make sure one of us asks a question.
Well, you brought up the Hardy Boys, so.
Well, yeah, only because, Sean Cassidy
No,
was.
right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and, I just, I guess when you think back over it, I mean, there have been a lot of really top rated crime shows. People, there's a big audience fan base for those. So
Yeah, I mean, look at Law and Order. I mean, Law and Order is until like
yeah,
year 85 or something, isn't it?
and I do think by and large I think those are a bit more realistic in the way that they go about solving things.
Right,
So
yeah.
but I mean everything can't be the same, because then um that would just like take away from all these shows. So Three Pines, what I've watched so far is very creative, and it definitely has like some shocking moments, and the characters are like really really well developed, of where I am in this season so far.
All right. Well, let's talk to Anna and find out what she's been doing on the series.
Yeah, let's see, if we can like solve any mysteries about her.
Okay. All right. Well, here.
Columbo, let's get with it.
Okay. Here we go.
Anna, I want to welcome you to Backstory Sessions today. We're so excited to have you as our guest.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
You have such a fascinating story, and it seems to me like, I don't know, like fate maybe plays a part of so much of your life, and I just want to hear this story and how it all ties together. So, I guess my first question, it ties into your love story. So let's start there. You were uh, traveling as a production of Our Country's Good in Toronto. So does that sound accurate so far?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and so you had been like, this was a 7-week tour, and in the last week of that 7-week tour, what happens? You end up in a dive bar in Toronto.
Exactly. Shall I take it from there?
Yes, I must know. How did that happen?
Okay, so yes, let's start from there. So 7 years, maybe even 8 years ago now, I think. The years, they keep adding up, don't they? So 8 years ago now, I was on tour with a play called Our Country's Good, which was a revival of a show that was done originally in the 80s at the Royal Court in London, and we were taking it back to one of its original touring spots in Toronto at the Royal Alex Theatre. And we were on tour for 7 weeks in Toronto. Prior to that, we'd been in Minneapolis for 6 weeks. And in the last week of touring, me and some of the cast members went to this bar called Grossman's Tavern. And Grossman's Tavern, I think to most people would seem like a dive bar, but to me was just completely charming and wonderful. And every Sunday they would have the New Orleans band play, late into the night. And the kind of tradition there was that anyone could get up on stage and sing. And although I'm an actor and a performer, I wasn't really a confident singer. And I wanted to make a point before I left and went back to London that I would also get up on stage and sing a tune with these guys. And one night, there was a different band playing, and there was someone playing the banjitar, who happens to now be my husband. He was there. He was playing that night, and I had asked him, how do you go about asking to get up and sing a tune, and then everything kind of went from there. He helped me pick a song, and I got up on stage finally before going back to the UK, and it was a bit of a disaster. They didn't really know the song, and, but I did it, and even though it kind of all went wrong, it was the blossoming of a romance between me and my partner Gabriel DeSantis, and we really didn't expect a long-term relationship. I think partly for me, I just recently lost my father at that time, and so going back to the UK, I couldn't really imagine splitting myself between London and Toronto, and it was all kind of out of the question. But as soon as I got back to London, we would call each other every night, and then it just went from there. And Gabriel moved to London for 2 years, and we lived on a narrowboat. We converted a narrowboat and lived on that on the canals in London. And then after 2 years, it was sort of my turn to come to Toronto and feel things out here. And that's kind of what led me to the work that I'm doing right now, which is a TV show that's set in Canada and is filmed in Quebec and the Eastern Townships and in Montreal. And it's funny, all that wouldn't be happening right now if I hadn't have come here 8 years ago and met my partner and had this kind of connection to both London and Toronto. So there you go.
So what song did you sing? I'm dying to know that no one seemed to really know.
Well, we were really shocked that they didn't know it. But I think because they usually just do kind of old-timey tunes and blues tunes, but they didn't know Nina Simone's I'm Feeling Good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
The tempo, I think, was probably all wrong. And, they just had no idea.
So was it love at first sight?
It was, in a way. I mean, it was, like I said, I was kind of going through a big grief period in my life. So I think part of me wasn't really switched on to being vulnerable enough to be in a place that I could be in a relationship, let alone with someone from another country. I think my heart was protecting itself from going there. But, I think we're both luckily very patient people, and that was what was required for us to, keep talking every day, and we kind of became friends. And then it just kept growing in that way, which is really lovely, actually.
So how long after you went back, how long did you talk before he ended up moving there?
So I think we did, we were apart for a couple of months, and then he came to London it was the first time he'd been to London. He came for a couple of weeks, and then a few months later, I went to Toronto for a month, and we drove down to New Orleans, and we, spent time in Toronto. And then some months later from then, Gabe applied for like a 2-year under 30s visa, and he got that, and then just did the brave leap and moved to London for 2 years. So we did kind of a year and a bit of long distance and moving back and forth, and yeah.
So what was it like living on the narrowboat?
It was magical. It was one of my favorite times. I'm sure we look at it through rose-tinted glasses because there were lots of things that went wrong as well. And we bought, an older boat because that's all we could afford. And we, snazzed her up and got her looking really good. She was called the Looking Glass. And I loved it. I kind of liked that wandering way of life. Every 2 weeks you move the boat a little bit further along, and you kind of move east to west and then west to east. You have to sort of continuously be cruising, never too far, but that's just sort of to keep the waterways moving so they don't get too, clogged up in any one area with too many boats. And, I could, a few steps and I could walk out my front door of my boat and be in nature. You're by the water, you're usually by parks, you're in kind of parts of London that are the nicest parts of London, but they're slightly off the beaten track. You'll be in a park or something like that, and people won't even know the canal is there, but it's right there. And I used to sit on the roof of my narrowboat and drink my coffee, and I just loved it. It was a really active way of living, and you had the stove on the boat, which was just so romantic in a lot of ways. And yeah, I loved it.
That sounds wonderful. So what was it like then, moving from that back to Canada?
Very different. I mean, funnily, the first time I mentioned the idea of living on a boat to Gabriel, he was just like, "What? You're crazy," because he was used to Canadian weather, and he just thought, "Are you mad? Like you were gonna freeze." He didn't understand that like the English seasons could allow for it. So moving back, we we again were living in quite a small space. We were used to living in small spaces, but we were really near a park, which was ideal. I think we like to be close to nature, and you've got the lake in Toronto, which is gorgeous. And but it was a lot of new things, and you're sort of putting yourself out there to start a life in a new place, and that takes a lot of work. But I think there's so much to be learned from moving to a new city if you're willing to kind of put yourself into that place and make it yours. I think there's a lot to be learned from different cultures, and I was used to being a very self-deprecating British person, and then quickly learned that the Toronto film and TV actors were just so much more confident. And I was like, oh god, okay, I've got to really up my game. I don't know what it is about British actors. Often, they don't like to admit that they're very, very good at anything. We just, I'm sure I'm a good actor, but I don't want to brag about it. Whereas Toronto actors are like, yeah, I'm great at what I do, and why would I say otherwise? This is like really straightforward, confident, and I was like, wow, I need to maybe learn a bit of that, and so
Have you developed that?
Say that again.
Have you developed that skill now that you are able to be confident when you speak about your talents?
I think so. I think, even just the sense of walking into a room and not seeming totally shy, you have to be able to let the people know that you're going to be all right on set, because otherwise they just think, is this poor girl okay? She's great when she's taping, but she's very shy. So yeah, I think I've managed to find a good balance.
Well, so moving back to Canada led you to this opportunity for Three Pines. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so I was filming something in London in October 2020, I think, and it was a project called Deceit for Channel 4, and it was written and created by Emilia de Girolamo, who also wrote and created the adaptation from Louise Penny's novels into the Three Pines series. And at the time, I had finished filming on Deceit, and after filming, I got just the loveliest message from Emilia, which doesn't normally happen, I think, from production or directors or writers. You don't normally get a kind of personal note from them. And she reached out and was just so generous and lovely about my performance and so on, and was very grateful. And she then, at that point, let me know about this project that she was writing, and it was going to be shooting in Canada. And, she said it's based on these novels, and she doesn't know when it's going to audition or what, but she just wanted to let me know that it was happening. And she'd only seen me in this one role that I filmed for her before, and really she didn't know me that well, but something about Emilia's nature and her very, I think, generous and intuitive kind of reaching out meant that she told me about the project, and she knew I was in Canada as well as London. And so I threw myself into the novels and quickly started to identify with this character that I'm now actually playing, who's an artist who lives in this quirky town of Three Pines. And when it came time to audition, I didn't didn't know how it would go, and there was no guarantee of anything. And even if they liked me, Amazon would have to approve. And, you know, you go through so many stages of that audition process. And, but luckily, I think being able to read the books for all those months, I was really immersed in those stories and in that character. And so it was a really great place to be able to go to an audition, because normally you have maybe a couple of days to prepare for something, and you really notice the difference when you've got all that time to let it really sink in on a deeper subconscious level. And so it was a really enjoyable audition, and luckily it all worked out.
Had you identified as an artist, you know, other than acting? Were you like into visual arts before you auditioned?
Yeah, I was actually. And I mean, I come from quite an artistic family. My dad was also an actor before he passed, but he was also very artistic. And one of the first jobs that he had was he worked at a printer's studio, and he used to be able to illustrate and draw incredible drawings. So he had that innately in him. And my mum is an artist, and she does many different things. She's a painter primarily, but she also crochets, and she crochets jewelry, which I ended up wearing as this character Clara in Three Pines, because she's a very kind of tactile person, and so it didn't make sense to wear lots of metal. So I wore all these wonderful organic things that my mum had made, and they were perfect for the character. And my sister's a jeweler, but also studied fine art, and she's like my mum, she can kind of do everything. And so although I had studied drama primarily, I was always really good at drawing. I really enjoyed painting when I had the time to do it, and always had an interest in it, but never really had the time to dedicate to it. And funnily enough, since filming, in the year after we finished, I started to take pottery lessons, and I've now I'm about to kind of launch my own pottery business, which is wild to think about. But I really got into pottery, and in a way that, you know, drawing and painting and all, or, you know, graphic design didn't really quite do it for me. I was good at it, but it didn't suck me in. And as soon as I started pottery, it was like an obsession, and it was all of my skills that I had artistically went into this new art form. And so this whole last year, when I've not been acting, I've been making pottery, and I'm about to kind of launch all that. And it's crazy to think that I just kind of went for it.
So I think I read that your great-grandfather built kilns, maybe?
Yes. So I started this kind of journey, and then some way into it, my mum told me first that my grandmother had told her, my mum had asked her, you know, what would you have wanted to do if you weren't a teacher? And she said, I would have loved to have been a potter. And I never knew this about my grandmother. And then she told me that my great-grandfather had built kilns. And that's something that my mum remembers from her childhood. So it's clearly somewhere in our story. And I mean, pottery is, you know, a very ancient tradition. So I'm sure it's in a lot of people's stories, which is no doubt why it's so fascinating to so many people. You know, when they get into it, it's very all-encompassing. Yeah, it's there in the family tree, which is bizarre.
But it's a talent that you could have, like, just skipped over had you not, like, experienced it. You know, that's so weird to me. Like, it seems like all these things keep happening to you that, you know, like, move you in this direction that you're supposed to be or something. It's
It's
so
a really nice way of thinking about it. I think that the more that we can kind of, without overthinking something, just keep leaning towards things that make sense. It's only ever in time that we realize that it had some kind of deeper meaning, right? You know, you only
yeah.
maybe notice 10 years down the line that it had an impact. Yeah.
And now you're starting your own pottery business. How fascinating is that? Just from, a talent that you didn't know you had, and then experience, and you like just fall in love with it, and now you're going to that next level. Are you nervous about that? Excited? How are you feeling?
Yeah. Well, I guess how it kind of catapulted was, again, and like you said, one of these sort of organic directions. So when I first moved to Toronto, one of my first jobs I had was as a server at a place called Bellwoods Brewery, and it's one of the kind of nicest restaurant spaces in Toronto. And just this last year, I was talking to the manager there, and she knew I was doing pottery and just starting, and she said, the candle holders and the vases, we need small candle holders and little bud vases. And oh no, I don't think I'm ready. I'm just at the beginning. Are you sure you want me to do this? I'm gonna I'm gonna ruin it. I just kind of held my nerve and said, yeah, I'll do that. And then very quickly knew that I had to get very, very good very fast. So it meant it was a kind of catalyst for me to go into the studio every day. And so I found a studio that I could work at every day, and I got very, very good very fast. And so my journey with the business kind of started with a personal commission for a public space, which I've now completed, and we're launching it in the space next week. And so now it's a weird part of sort of having this thing that I've made, this body of work, and having to create a website and a social media, and you've just created all of this physical work that was quite taxing. The thought of then having to sort of brand yourself and do all that kind of aspect of it is a little bit intimidating and a little bit exhausting, if I'm honest. So I'm just trying to kind of pull back, enjoy what I've done so far, share it with the world and with the people around me, and just kind of take a step back. I think, we can get very obsessed with a project and not leave ourselves any time to really think about the next step and enjoy the next step. And I want to enjoy this process. I don't need it to be a all-encompassing money-making venture. I'd like it to be an artistic journey. And so I'm really, really trying to tell myself to just take it slow from this point. And hopefully you'll see the website and everything come out soon. It's called Spell Jar Pottery. And yeah, it'll all be out soon, but trying not to rush at the same time. Don't know if you can relate to that.
Yes, and I think I can't wait to the website does up and running, so we can look at the work that you've created. What has been the most rewarding thing about Three Pines and the role that you're playing?
I think the most rewarding thing, it's hard to pinpoint one thing. I think the project as a whole was such a dream, really, and I really can't fault any one part of it. And I think for all those different elements to work so well together. You really need great people who are kind of running it. And Alfred Molina, who is our number one and our lead actor, he was one of those people who really helped to solidify everyone as a family. And I think that's the aspect that I enjoyed the most, is that we were all able to feel like a family, and there was very little ego on set, which was facilitated by Alfred and his generosity, and he never made anyone else feel like they weren't, the same. And so I think that's a very special thing, because, unlike the theatre, you're not rehearsing for 4 weeks and getting to know each other and making all these connections and telling stories. On a film set or a TV set, you're turning up with the work as ready as it's ever going to be, and you have a very small rehearsal before you shoot, and it's very piecemeal and it's very fleeting, and then you go back to your trailer. And so when you have someone on set who's really binding everyone together and making everyone feel really relaxed on set, that's it's such an important quality to share around a company, because it means everyone is just happier and is willing to go the extra mile. And the same goes for the crew as well. I think they all commented that it was the best crew, the best set they've ever worked on. I really think that is testament to Fred Molina. So yeah, I would say that.
So when you're watching the episodes, do you have a character that you really like?
Yeah, who's my favorite? Oh, there's so many. I think one of my favorites has to be Tantu Cardinal, who plays B. Maya. She runs this art center called Be Calm in Three Pines, and Tantu Cardinal is just, she's a phenomenal actress, that she's got so much depth and spirit and spirituality in a way in her work, and she's just gorgeous to watch, and she's definitely a favorite. Me and my mum are really obsessed with Tantu and her character. I think she's just so watchable, and she's also another great human who is very, very playful. I had a really nice time with Tantu on set, and she's my kind of person, so I really got along with her well.
How did your mom feel about seeing some of the jewelry she crocheted, like you wearing that on the show?
She doesn't talk about it too much. I think she's kind of happy that it happened, but she's not she's not like telling everyone about that. She's just happy that her little girl is in it. I think that's what's exciting to her, and yeah, I think she gets more excited about that than anything else. And she's very sweet. She'll listen to this interview. She'll listen to it all. It's that classic parent who wants to guzzle down everything that you're doing and listen to it all and take it all in. So yeah, I think she appreciated it. But
so we have to say hi to your mom. So
hi, Mom.
Yeah.
She's called Andrea Tierney, and she is a wonderful artist. And if you want to find her artwork on Instagram or online, it's Andrea Tierney. And my sister is called Elsa Tierney, and so we are Anna and Elsa, like the Frozen princesses. I don't know if you've watched Frozen.
Wow.
Pre-Frozen, of course. Yeah, coincidence.
Wow, that is something. Your mom was a visionary in that.
That's right.
Those names. So, Matt, I don't know. What do you think of all these coincidences
No,
how this all is like a beautiful story.
yeah, certainly interesting for sure. How it all kind of like goes full circle, like I guess. Um,
Hmm.
I have a. I'm curious how roller derby fits into all of this.
Just one of the many hobbies I decided to take up in my lifetime. Why not add roller derby to the list? Oh, I love roller derby. I played for around 10 years. I did stop more recently just because I was trying to start a life here in Toronto, and it was just too much. I had to give something up in order to
Right.
make something happen here, and it's very all consuming. You train multiple times a week, and so I played with the London roller derby, and then I also for a brief moment I made the A team, the Toronto roller derby A team, and then swiftly had to leave because it was the middle of winter and it's a very physical sport, and I had no time, and it was such a long journey to travel, and I was covered in bruises. I looked like I'd just been in street fights constantly, and it was like, I gotta do something here. But no, I played, since leaving drama school. I discovered it through the daughter of a director I had worked with at drama school. She was big into it, and she took me to see a game, and I was just stunned watching it because it's a predominantly female played sport,
Right.
and it's just incredible to watch, and to watch women being so powerful and so athletic. And I think it's a sport that should be on every sport channel. It's so entertaining. It's so incredibly athletic and physical, and it's also family friendly, which I think not all football games are. I don't think you can say the same for every male dominated sport necessarily, and it's the best. It's electric when you watch it. It's I don't know how much you know about roller derby, but
I've seen it on TV. Like it used to be on TV a lot more when I was younger. I remember seeing it. Not so
well, it's
much.
changed a lot since then.
Yeah.
I don't know what. Yeah, I think back in the day when it was the first kind of version of roller derby, it was more of a kind of, everyone's kind of playing up to the crowd, and
Yeah.
there's a bank track, and everyone's in costume, and
Yeah.
but now, and I encourage people not to watch documentaries on Netflix that say that they're covering the sport, because they usually go for the most sensational kind of version of it, which is that the people who are still playing that kind of early, slightly jokey version of the sport. But now it's honestly, it's so much more advanced than it ever was. The sport, because it's still in its infancy, keeps getting better and more advanced, and it keeps getting harder to play because the players keep getting more and more skilled at their offense and defense. And but I guess it's a remarkable thing that it's only an amateur sport, and yet they achieve so much. So like you'd have women who are doctors or just any old job, and yet they're still playing this sport and running the league in their spare time for no money, and raising the money to do it, which means they don't have to take sponsorship and all the rest of it, but it means a hell of a lot of work. And I would like to see a future where there's some investment in the sport, and it's allowed to still retain its kind of diverse, sometimes often queer identity, and be, a great place for women in sport. I think that would be a really exciting thing.
What was your first time doing it? Like, I mean, were you like nervous, afraid you're going to get hurt, that sort of thing, or did you just get out there and like, ah?
Well, they don't let you just play a game straight away. They, back in the day, it used to be called fresh meat. I think they call it something less like scary now. I
Right.
think they've sort of put off by the idea of calling it fresh meat. Where you'd learn the basics of skating and of roller derby, and then gradually, the more you progress in your training, you start to play, you start to scrimmage in training, and then you start playing games. So I took to it very quickly because I'd rollerbladed a lot as a kid, and so I was confident on skates, and I liked going fast, and I had good balance. But roller skates compared to blades is a whole other story. And once you get the hang of it, you can be really agile. It's much more fun than blades. But yeah.
Interesting.
Don't get me going. I'll talk about it for too long. Or all your listeners.
It's just like, so, I mean, I don't want to say it seems like out of character or whatever, but it's just unexpected, I guess.
Of me, of what I look like, you mean? Or, I know. Well, I think that I look like a kind of some sort of English rose. But then, my friends would say too, like one of my friends at drama school, she'd say, "Oh, Anna, you look so lovely," and then you open your mouth, and you just got such a foul mouth. And I'm not swearing today on this podcast, obviously, but I think when I'm allowed to be me, I don't sound maybe exactly as I look, but. Yeah.
Well, next time when you come back, we'll get into that a little bit more. All right, Kat. What else do you have?
I was just curious about what's next for you. What are the future plans? I guess you're waiting to see if Three Pines is getting season 2. But what projects are you looking forward to in the new year?
Yeah. Well, very much hoping that it gets a season 2. It's been number 1 in, I think, all the territories bar 1, in which it's number 2, and so the figures are there. So we're really hoping for a season 2, and I think we'll find out soon. And so if that happens, that will be one of the projects next year. And other than that, I'm looking forward to keeping going with my other creative practices, my pottery and my writing, and just kind of trying to take a step back and see what suits.
And I see that the musician, let's see, that one of the songs of is it your husband or
yeah
yes
show?
Yeah.
So
that's really amazing too.
It's really amazing, and it happened. So because I was in contact with Amelia, the creator, and she knew I was out here, and I was like, "Do you want me to send you Canadian music?" Because we were talking about musicians, and she was like, "Absolutely," because she was, doing her own research, but any Canadian knowledge was only going to be more helpful. So I sent her a whole selection of different musicians, one of them being some of Gabe's earlier music, which was much more folky and spooky and perfect for the show. And I made sure not to mention who Gabe was, because I wanted anyone's music to stand out of its own accord. And so I sent her a whole selection of different things, and one of the songs was Northern Lights, which was a song that he wrote, I think, when he was 23. And it's this beautiful, haunting Canadian song, and it got used in episode 3, and it was only later that Amelia discovered that, Gabe then became my husband and was my partner. And so yeah, it's nice to know that it was chosen of its artistic merit, and it wasn't a kind of a shoe-in or anything. But yeah, it's been wonderful. I think this song could be another kind of Canadian anthem. I think it's so true and beautiful and pure, this song, and I encourage everyone to go listen to it. It's his early band, which was called White Brow, and the song is called Northern Lights. Yeah.
Well, I just think you have the most beautiful story. I can't wait to see like what the next chapter is like, and how the connections just keep, you have all these backstories that lead to kind of the next chapter. So I'll be really curious to have you back as a guest again, and see what else has developed.
That'd be lovely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been really, really lovely way to spend the hour. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much. All right, well, enjoy your holidays and enjoy 3 Pines, and see you when I next see you.
As always, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can send those to Kat at iwriteplease@outlook.com, or you can write to me at backstorysessions@gmail.com, or matt@level11ventures.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.